Welcome, welcome. Here we are back on the record with Chief Shields. Great to see you, Chief. It's been a little bit, huh?
You as well, Beth.
Yeah, so we moved facilities, right?
We did.
Yeah, and we'll be looking forward to that new headquarters that we're going to be getting
That's
eventually, right?
No, we should be there, I would hope, by the end of the year that at least a good portion of LMPD will be in our new headquarters, and it'll be great. You and I'll be able to see far more of one another and far more of our colleagues.
Sure, you're looking forward to that. But, no, I mean, I think that a new space for everybody at headquarters will be something, I think everybody's looking forward to. Big change. We needed some new facilities, and you're going to make that happen. So we all appreciate that. What else has been going on here?
I mean, it's been busy. There's been a ton of things, but yes. So from a podcast standpoint, we had to get into this new space, get it set up, and then there's been obviously a lot of change going in the new year. But I really I'm glad we're in a space where we're back and we're going to get a cadence to doing our podcast.
Yeah, I agree. I think everybody likes to hear us and see us and all the good stuff.
We hope so, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know what I am looking forward to? The spring is sprung. So we're moving back into traditional Derby. I had a meeting with KDF, Kentucky Derby Festival, about Thunder. Full steam ahead. Back to regular, right? We're unmasked now. We're back, and
it's good.
Good stuff. Yeah. So today, to kind of gear in a different direction. We've brought a guest to speak. We're excited to have her. If you'll introduce her, please.
Sure. So the guest today is Major Shannon Lauder, who is not to be confused with Beth. And when I first came here, and especially when folks were wearing masks, I think probably 6 or 7 times I mixed you two up, and you were very gracious, both of you, and just politely correcting me each time. So, Major, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And there's worse people to be confused for than Beth.
I appreciate it.
There you go.
Beth and I, when worked on the same platoon, and when I very first got here, I tell the story all the time that they called me the little Beth or the new Beth. And like I said, there's a lot worse things to be compared to, so I took it.
Yeah, same. I'm glad to be confused for you any day. My
Nothing
younger twin. Appreciate that.
There you go.
So Major Lauder, one of the things, so as we're going into the new year, so we're almost at a quarter of the way into 2022. We're in an odd space in that our violent crime is down approximately 18%. Our Part 1 crimes, which is what the FBI measures us by, is down 13%. And so we should be feeling good about the work we're doing and that we're in the right areas. But unfortunately, we continue to see a spike in our homicides. And so when I start looking at the homicides and dissecting them to say, okay, what can we do better at LMPD? The one thing that's jumping out at me that really gives me pause is there is an increase in our domestic violence homicides. And this year, we're going to be around, right now, 20 to 25% of our homicides are directly tied to domestic violence in some way, shape, or form. If we stay on that cadence, we're going to be up around 200% by next year, by the end of the year.
Which is scary.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm trying to do is identify how we can help insert LMPD into these scenarios so that we can help victims not become homicide victims. And I know that your current assignment, you're the commander of our downtown district. You do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you. But previously you worked over all of our domestic violence, sex crimes, and when I came here, I heard repeatedly what a good job you had done running that unit, how passionate you were about that unit. And so I really wanted to draw on your expertise to try to identify some of the drivers and then some of the resources that are available to folks out there. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get us in the space to today.
Yeah, definitely.
When you were over domestic violence, sexual assault, can you speak to like some of the patterns that you saw that are contributors and that maybe that we can adopt to attempt to to prevent some of these heinous acts?
Yeah. So, like you said, I was the commander of the Special Victims Unit for almost 2 years, and I was super passionate about it. When you join the police department, all cops say the same thing, right? We wanted to help people, and Special Victims Unit was like the best place to do that, like helping, people who genuinely sometimes can't help themselves. And I really loved what I was doing. And one of the patterns that we saw, particularly with domestic violence, was a history of violence for that person, whether that be a history of almost child abuse, or that they had witnessed domestic violence in the home that they were brought up in, or in a history of relationships. Another pattern we saw frequently was mental health issues, addiction issues going on in a household that was contributing to this problem. So that was a lot of patterns that we saw when we're looking over these assaults.
So it's hard to interrupt that cycle, especially if you're laying on top of it, was the addiction issue as well. So how did you guys make inroads in this space? What was your approach to saying, all right, we know these are the problems we have, we know these are the folks we need to help. What were some of the solutions you had?
So a couple things. One of the things that, as a brand new beat officer, one of the things, I was 22 years old, and you go to a domestic violence situation, maybe you've been to this house 3 or 4 times before, and you get frustrated. Like, I'm here again, and, she's been abused again, he's been abused again, why hasn't she left? And, like, what you learn through time and maturity and experience is you have to meet a victim where they are. You have to make sure that they know the resources are available. These are options that you have, but you can't force anyone to do something that they're not ready for, that they don't want. And so you have to be patient and meet them where they are and provide that support when they're ready. As LMPD, one of the most creative things that we participate in that I thought was really productive is something called the Fatality Review Board. So this is a group of community partners, judges, prosecutors, mental health professionals, social workers, and we get together and review every domestic fatality in Jefferson County to talk about, hey, what happened? What are the details? Is there something we could do different in the future to offer support to somebody to leave a situation, to prevent this from happening again? And I thought, I found it really productive. I learned a lot, just particularly about everything that the other groups do. This isn't just a police problem. There's so many other partners that we have that we all work on this together with.
So thank you. And Beth, this reminds me, I'm going back even further than her. I think when I was a beat cop, and I'm sure you went through this as well, is you go on these calls, you don't know what to offer the victim.
Yes.
And so, right, you got what Shannon's describing, Major Lauder is describing. You're frustrated because you're like, okay, why isn't this person doing something? But the flip side of it is, you as a cop, you didn't go out there equipped with solutions necessarily.
Right. And I think it is a challenge because everybody sees it and thinks, just pick up and leave. Right. Just pick up and leave. There's all kinds of barriers beyond the emotional connection within that home. There's financial barriers. There's so many things with that pattern of abuse and, ways that people can't get out of there. And and I believe it was under your watch, the Victim Services Unit was created. Is that correct? Or at least developed?
I did get to watch it grow, and I don't want to take any credit for it. The director of our Victim Services Unit is named Nicole Carroll, and she is one of the hardest working, most passionate people I've ever met.
Amazing. She's amazing.
And in the past 5 years, she has helped, with your support chief and the support from the city, help the unit grow from 1 person to 14 people. And it's incredible. When she first started, she could only help victims of sexual assault because that was the capacity. Now she's doing all, violent crime, felony domestic violence assaults. They have a capacity to respond 24/7 if a victim is in need. And it's just incredible. So if an officer responds to a domestic and a victim does want to get out of this situation, the officers can call for a victim service specialist to come in who can help with emergency housing, childcare, safety planning is one of the big things that they do, and that's something that this opportunity today I want to make sure to message if there is somebody in a situation where they want to get out and they're unsafe, that we do have those resources available to help you safety plan, find housing, things like that. And
so you call 911?
Absolutely. And they're incredible. They're passionate, and they would go to the ends of the earth to help, somebody in need.
And I think that does, as Major Lauder just spoke, that you have identified some of these things on the department that can be, that are in progress or working, but could be strengthened by creating a more robust program, adding more individual civilians to help with these programming. And, I think even with the domestic violence unit, you had a...
We brought back some of our investigators who are retired, but that's their passion. And because it's yes, there's the investigative part, but there's the resource allocation. It's reaching out to the victim. And when you're talking about, it was a bulk of the 911 calls that I think most cops respond to are domestic. And you have to, especially when you're a younger person, not get jaded to it and be like, well, why? They don't want to leave.
Right.
And yet, I'm sorry, but no one wants to be a human punching bag. And to your point, financially, they often can't leave. The children, they don't want to leave the children behind. And so I think, so from our end, when we respond as cops, I mean, there's the initial report, but I think, do you find that the officers are going above and beyond? Or have we done enough of a job messaging that internally?
I do think more and more, as I'm 16 years into this, and I have seen the development of the domestic violence programming and the way we handle domestic violence. And I think some of that had come from the Fatality Review Committee. We now have stronger documentation with the JC3s. Whenever we make a run on a domestic, whether there's physical violence or not, we document all of that so we can look and see historically what has occurred within that home. And it allows us, and it also allows the victims to be able to take some action for protective orders and stuff like that. But I think you probably can speak more.
Yeah, and something that's evolved over the years is that LMPD participates in is something called the Lethality Assessment Program. And so...
What is it called?
It's called the Lethality Assessment Program. We call it LAP for short. But it's anytime an officer responds to a domestic and there was physical violence between partners, they fill out an assessment form that basically assesses the likelihood that this person could be further victimized by domestic violence or killed in domestic violence. And then that officer automatically connects them to resources before leaving the scene. Connects them to one of our community partners here, to offer them resources. And so, that's one of the things we've done moving forward. We've learned, as time moves on with data, the risk of strangulation in domestic assaults. And so they also, if there is a strangulation involved in an assault, they do a screening regarding a strangulation that helps not only determine the risk for future assault, but also helps prosecutors gather information for a thorough prosecution.
So let me ask you this. When I went through the homicide victims this year of domestic violence, about 60% of them they and the suspect had no prior 911 call, interaction. So my question is, I think when you, as a coworker, as a family member, when someone does not have a good home life.
Absolutely.
So for the folks that are out there and they have a loved one that they're like, something is amiss here. I think indicators are a family member who can't talk to you. It's control, right? So
Absolutely.
It's like not allowing the spouse to have communication with friends, have friends, attend family events, is isolating them, is controlling their phone.
Have access to things like money,
Right.
things that, control. You notice that your contact with them is dwindling, things like that.
Exactly.
Obviously, things like bruising or making excuses for things, wearing long sleeves in summertime, like, more just less confident behavior, such as staring at the floor, not wanting to answer questions at all. Like, things like that are, this particularly became important when COVID happened. The
We didn't
pandemic,
talk about
and
COVID.
people were separated from their family and friends. And initially, as a police department, we'd never been through this. So our initial response is people are quarantining with their significant others. We're going to see an increase in domestic violence. And we were wrong. Because what ended up happening is we saw a drop because the family and friends that you're talking about were not able to intervene because we were separated from our loved ones. And so we realized then, we knew before, but we realized then like how important those interventions are. You know, and so my message to those people, you have a friend, family member that you think might be in a bad situation, reach out to them, ask them directly, offer them resources, reassure them that the support is available. You know, that they could come stay with you, that, you know, do you need me to call police? Do you need, you know, just reach out, be direct. Don't beat around the bush.
Right,
Ask them directly.
That really, what you're saying, I think really resonates because victims of domestic violence need support to get out of the situation. And if they don't have the support, like during COVID, when, like you said, when they're isolated, no one felt the strength to report or get away from those situations. So that's crucial for the community to come out and support people who are victims of domestic violence and allow their voice to be heard.
Yeah, it was just, like I said, COVID had an impact on domestic violence. It really did, because not only we talked about you were cut off from your support, but people were under more stress. They were homeschooling kids. They might have suffered financially because of COVID. And so it really had an impact on domestic violence that we just couldn't have predicted because we've never seen anything like this in law enforcement. So
No, I think you're spot on. I think initially everyone was kind of wanted to believe, hey, domestic violence is down, rapes are down, children being sexually abused are down. But now we just know, no, they've had no support. And so it's been underreported. And you're right. And I like how you framed, be direct, offer them help, but what you didn't say is don't judge them. You know, what you're inferring is offer support, but not judgment.
again, meet them where they are, you know, and it is really hard to understand why a victim might not leave, but there is so many reasons. Like a lot of times, if let's say the perpetrator does have an addiction issue or mental health issue, the victim might think that they're saving them. I need to help them. I need to be there for them. A lot of times there's been manipulating where the victim thinks this whole thing is their fault. The perpetrator might have more access to the finances, so they say, well, I could get a better lawyer and I am going to keep the kids away from you. So now you're choosing between your own safety and your children. Like, what are you supposed to do? And so, again, you know, if you are that friend, you don't judge. You offer that support. You let them know you're there, what the resources are. And you have to, it's very difficult sometimes to wait until they're ready to accept, you know, that help and that you know, hand that you're reaching out to them.
No, this is great.
I think
she's a talent.
The complexities that you've discussed are enormous. And I think something to acknowledge, too, although I said, you know, there could be financial barriers for people getting out of these situations, that doesn't mean that the home itself is underfunded or financially not capable.
So
it
true.
could be, you could be from a family with means, but if the perpetrator is holding all of the finances hostage, you can't get it. And we've seen women from all walks of life experiencing these tragedies and these situations. So it's not just a certain population that experiences this, and that's really important to acknowledge when you hear victims speak out, because you hear women saying that.
You are spot on, because what I'll go with even further is affluence puts greater value often on image.
For sure.
And so there will not be the reporting.
Yes.
And you also see it with sexual assault of children, sexual abuse of children, because it's the image. So,
and people should not be afraid of it. We want to destigmatize
That's right.
these things and not allow these victims to be shamed and hushed, because their voice is valid, needs to be heard, and they need to get out of these situations.
And I think that might be, circling back to what you were talking about earlier, the homicides that we've seen, a lot of them didn't have a history of domestic violence. I think that might be one of the reasons. And, you know, something else we know in policing is that the most dangerous time for a victim in a domestic violence relationship is when they decide to leave. They make that choice to leave. And so, you know, that might be what went on in these incidents, that maybe there wasn't a history before, but they had finally decided to leave. And so
you're right, there wasn't a reported history. You're right.
Correct.
But that doesn't mean it has not been going on for sure.
Right.
Yep.
And so, you know, in those victims, you know, too, if you are in a situation that's unhealthy and you have decided to leave, that's, again, when we want you to know that we're here and we have support for you and we have resources for you, such as our advocates could help you safety plan. They have access to things like counseling, you know, maybe for your kids, or, you know, we just want to be opened as a police department, we are really learning more about how to help victims. We used to take the bad guy to jail, and we thought, well, we're done. We've solved her problems, right?
Right.
No more problems for her. Well, that's not how that works at all now. Like
True.
that's how we've evolved in policing, and that's where, you know, these victim service specialists fit in to help go in and say, okay, now that this person's gone to jail, what else can we help with to help you, you know, not fall back into that situation?
And I think that's important for the public to know, that we are constantly reviewing our process as police. And I think that that's something that has been a top priority for you, to really look at progressive forms and ways that we can improve as a department, really in law enforcement in general, and better serving the community and the victims.
I have to say that the Victim Services Unit, as you touched on, the one in LMPD is phenomenal. And I've never encountered a law enforcement agency that had such a robust program. And Nicole Carroll runs it, and the ladies, I mean, she lives and breathes it, and she is something, and we're lucky to have her. Well, listen, thank you. I can see why you did so well in the unit. You know it cold, you're passionate about it, you can't feign that level of caring. So I really appreciate your willingness to take time out of your busy day.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
This is
I
cool.
look forward to it, and it was a good time.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
appreciate
you
it.
know, for, you know, we were able to share our passion for victims and everything in this podcast. And I want everybody to know, I'm just a substitute.
Matt's out of a job.
Nah,
Matt's out of a
Matt's
job.
I
coming
did
back.
wonder about
Everybody,
that. Yeah.
Matt will be back on the record. So thank you, both of you, for being here. And that's On the Record with LMPD.